What I'd like to start by doing, because I think that we have this tendency is to spread out. We go to the far reaches and the corners, not picking on those that are in the corners, little MCMD over there. But what I'd like to do, because one of the things that as a GGF that we're trying to do is bring our regions together and bring the country together. So this may get really uncomfortable, but I'd love to see if we can all fit in the middle section. Now, if you're quick, if you need to sit on the edges over here, that's fine, that's close. All right, I should have taken the first row out. No, you can sit in the first row. I just might spit on you. That's about it. You can send all your complaints to Cindy. One of the rewards for coming today is we're going to give away some Costa Rican coffee, and it's from Cafe Brit, and so we're going to give away some of that later. We're going to draw a name. Do you guys like coffee at all? Anybody? Okay, it's dark roast, but that's... All right, we're going to hear from a couple people because I want them to share some highlights, things going on at their church. But I want to introduce myself a little bit. A lot of you know who I am. You might have gone to college with me here at GBC and have stories. The thing is, I have probably more stories on most of you than you have on me. So just be really careful. Hey, as I always say, don't listen to Brian Lorenz. Can't be trusted. So I grew up in Seattle Berean Church under the leadership of Pastor Vern Schutz and also Pastor Jim Shamaria. Just so you get a picture, I graduated from GBC in 1997, got married a week later, and so my wife and I have been married for 20 years, coming up May 17th, which is also Norwegian Independence Day. So in one day, I lost my independence and gained my independence as a Norwegian. So, but I've been at Northwest Bible Church, which is in Enumclaw, Washington, working with Pastor Scott Myers. And then 9 years at Parkside Bible Church in Holland, working with Pastor Rob Renberg, and then also the last couple years with Pastor Gary Spikerman. And then obviously the last 6 months as interim director here at the Grace Gospel Fellowship. So it's a really exciting opportunity to be a part of things. Been on the council for about 7 years now, and just to see the growth and the movement in the GGF is exciting. And we've certainly got a lot of very difficult things to work on. But we also have some excitement brewing. I want to share a little bit of what I shared with the council as part of my report, just some highlights. And then I'm going to have Pastor Josh White and Pastor Trent Bodecker come up and share briefly just some really exciting things happening at their two churches. Hopefully you were part of the 40-day prayer journey that we went on as part of our vision with the area of focus of church planting, church health, and developing new leaders. So hopefully you got to be a part of that and encouraged your congregations to be a part of that. We heard many positive reports in those areas of people asking questions. I know Pastor Trent talked about somebody in the church starting to ask about what their church believes, but also what is this GGF? And so what we want to do real quick is we've got a video that's cued. This is, I'll be honest, these are some pictures that we may have pirated from your Facebook account? No, there are some pictures from the past, so if you think, you look really young, you probably do. It probably was 10 years ago that we took some of those. No, hopefully more modern, but gives us an idea of some of the things going on in the Grace Gospel Fellowship.
I can see the waters raging at my feet. I can feel the breath of those surrounding me. I can hear the sound of nations rising up. We will not be overtaken. We will not be overcome. I can walk down this dark and painful road. I can face every fear of the unknown. I can hear all God's children singing out. We will not be overtaken. We His promises are true in His strength. There is nothing we can't do. Yes, we know there are greater things in store. We will not be overtaken. We will not be overcome. The same power that rose Jesus from the grave, the same power that commands the dead to wake, lives in us, lives in us. The same power that moves mountains when He speaks, the same power that can calm a raging sea, lives in us, lives in us. He lives in us, lives in us. Greater is He that is living in me. He's conquered our enemy. No power of darkness, no weapon prevails. We stand here in victory. Oh, greater is He that is living in me. He's conquered our enemy. Oh, no power of darkness, no weapon prevails. We stand here in victory. Oh, in victory. The same power that rose Jesus from the grave, the same power that commands the dead to wake, lives in us, lives in us now. The same power that moves mountains when He speaks, the same power that can calm a raging sea, lives in us, lives in us. He lives in us.
One of the suggestions, a couple suggestions came into us as ways that can help congregations is to be able to, one is, Pastor Josh mentioned out in Phoenix, they had a discussion at their board level about being able to have a video. Now this is just a start. We hope in the future that we can come up with something more professional, a little more cutting edge, that we can get out the information on what is the GGF. And so that was one of the suggestions that came through. The other one was to have resources and have those on the website. So we are compiling lots of forms. And if your church has forms that you would like to share with us, that you would be willing to say to other churches, use these. Maybe they're permission forms. Maybe they're how to look for your next pastor. You don't want to push that one too much if you're currently there. But for a church to have those resources at their fingertips would be a benefit. And I think the more that we can as a GGF give to you and to your congregations, the better. So we are compiling those resources. Those are going to be put up on the website so that you can go to, your board could go to. Just a way to know the GGF is doing something and providing something beyond simply what most people would say is the doctrine and pastoral search. I think a lot of times those are the two things that we think about when we think about the GGF. Just to share a few more things, one of the things that we're trying to work with is GBC pastoral students. And I see we've got a couple up there. If you are a current pastoral or ministry student, if you would stand. GBC. Awesome. Go ahead and stay standing. What I'd like to do is I'd like you to get familiar. If you may know some of these guys, but maybe you could just say who you are, where you're from, and what aspect of ministry. Maybe Don, you can hand this to him.
Hi, I'm Ben Lange. I'm from Mobile, Alabama, and I'm in pastoral ministry currently.
Hi, I'm AJ Garcia. I'm from Wayne, Michigan, and I'm studying pastoral ministry. Hi, Nick Brown. I am youth ministry, also your youth director out at Muskegon Berean Church. Don't even know my own church's name.
And my name is Alex Tulsi. I am a junior, also a pastoral student from Omaha, Nebraska. And I think that's all of us.
Awesome. Let's hear it for these guys. One of the things we've started, and we've only done now twice, is to be able to meet with these pastoral students, ministry students, in the morning at 7 a.m. There may be a reason why attendance has been low. 7 a.m. they tell me is kind of early. So they're looking at 10 a.m. or I've been thinking I'll just come at curfew, which I don't know what that is now, midnight, 1 o'clock. We'll have a good Bible study then instead of, because nothing good happens after midnight anyway. So we'll have Bible study together. But that's one of those ways that I want to be able to connect. And if you're in town, even if you're not from this West Michigan region, if you'd like to be a part of one of those conversations, we try to get to know each other a little bit better, but we have a certain ministry topic that we look at. And so if you'd like to be a part of that, I'd love to have you come on it's usually a Wednesday or Thursday morning. So just let me know if you have an interest in that. Just a way for us to be able to connect. I want to share some exciting things going on with church planting. One of the things that has come up, and it's a little bit of not a mixed bag, but it's bittersweet, is the closing back in November of Hilltop Bible Church in the Chicago area in Crestwood as part of Region 4. And they had gone a number of years without a pastor, but it was sad to see them close their doors. And part of what they agreed upon was that when they closed the doors, that would be given to Grace Bible College. And Grace Bible College could very well have said, you know what, we're just going to sell and take that and use it towards dorms, or we're going to use it towards a new facility or something else here. President Kemper has been very clear that he wants to see a GGF church plant ministry, preferably in that Chicago area, and maybe looking at a different location in that area. But that's something that is both, it's just bittersweet. We don't want to see churches close their doors. But if we can take the resources of that and use them in another place to be able to reach others, then we find that exciting. So we've had a couple of teams go down and just check out the ministry opportunities in that area, and we're going to continue to do that as well. I'll be meeting with the Grace Bible College board on Friday to talk about kind of some of the vision that we see with that, but I love the partnership that we have with Grace Bible College. I don't want to see any of our ministries just GBC by itself or GMI by themselves or GGF by themselves, but that we're working together. So that's kind of one of those that's certainly bittersweet, but we're excited for what the Lord has in store in the Chicago area. Another one that we're looking at some opportunities even out in Southwest and potentially Phoenix. But what I want to do is I want to have Josh come up, and Josh has got some really exciting things that are going on at his church and just seeing how the Lord's working. So Josh, maybe give us a couple minutes and share what's been going on at Grace.
Yeah, Matt asked me this morning to share, and so not quite sure what to share. But if I ramble off in the wrong direction, maybe you can ask me a question or something and get on the right direction. Yeah, some exciting things are happening in Phoenix, and I feel very blessed that I just so happen to be the pastor in the church at this time in its history. I've been there 10 and a half years now, and what specifically do you want me to talk about? How you've
seen the Lord work.
Okay. This morning, this whole pastor's conference is about discipleship. And we're experiencing some growth right now, some numeric growth and a lot of biological growth, which is wonderful. A lot of young families, and they're just having lots of kids. But, back in October, we kind of maxed out our facility, and we're trying to figure out, okay, what are we supposed to do? Should we buy another building? Should we build? And we came to the conclusion that we didn't want to spend millions of dollars and hope that things worked out. And so we decided, let's take a step of faith. Let's go to 2 services. We have a lot of young families in their 20s and 30s that are very educated in the Bible, and they have lots of leadership potential. And so we said, if we went to 2 services, then we're creating more opportunities for our people. And then whenever you do something like that, it's kind of scary. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? And so we took that chance, and we've been 7 months, 6 months, and we've grown. We've grown quite a bit, which is pretty exciting. And we're seeing new families come in, and now we're looking at, we have a neighbor's property, and he has the backyard is able to be parking for us. So we want to try to purchase that at some point, make that into some classrooms. And it's very exciting to be there. And, you wanted me to share this, and it's easier, I think, to share with other pastors your struggles because we can all relate to that, right? But who wants to come up here and say, hey, things are going really well? But I can say, and this is not just trying to be, falsely humble, but I feel like if this is just because of the families that have been in this church for generations and generations, the church is now experiencing the fruit from their faithfulness. And so there's two families in particular, the McFaddens and the Kincaids, and maybe those names sound familiar to some of you, but they are there every Sunday. They volunteer in just about everything, and they taught their kids to do that, and then they taught their kids to do that, and now the grandkids are now having the great-grandkids, and they are always there. They're always working, and it has really created a culture that when somebody comes into the church, these families have set the standard, and we're now seeing just this really great fruit from their faithfulness. So we're growing, but it's not because we found some new program. There's nothing special that we're doing. When people come to the church, we say, open your Bibles to, and we teach the Bible. We're involved in discipleship, but it's just really neat to be there at this time. And I hope that those families know it's because they said, this is what we do. We're going to serve the Lord. We're going to teach the Bible, and just seeing that growth. And so I guess we're experiencing fruit from like the crock pot method. There's nothing instantaneous, but I guess that's an encouragement. Hopefully all of us will realize, just keep doing the right thing over and over again. Keep showing up, keep being faithful, and if it's God's will, you're going to see some of that fruit. And some of the fruit is growth, but just to see these young families in their 20s and their 30s. In fact, I'll share another story. I had one of the young men, we just voted our congregational meeting this last Sunday to bring on 2 additional staff, because now we need somebody to oversee children's ministries and then also a family life pastor. And so we hired a couple of people within the church. And I got a phone call from another young guy in the church. He said, hey, can we meet? I got something I got to talk to you about. And I'm like, oh, great. Is there a marriage falling apart? What is this? And so he sits across from the table from me, and this doesn't happen very often. He goes, I just want you to know I'm kind of jealous that these other people are getting these jobs because I want my own ministry at this church to do. And I mean, how many times do you get that? And so just trust me, I know who you are, and you're going to have a ministry, but we need to go to 2 services so that more people have opportunities. So, but it's because they see this modeled by their parents and their grandparents, and so just stay faithful. Just keep showing up and be consistent, and then hopefully good things happen. And I just happened to be there at the time, so it's good.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate your willingness to jump in there. Another person that I'm not going to ask come up is Josh Herman, but you can stand up. Josh, where are you? Oh, you played a trick on me. So Josh is from the Shoreline Church out in the Northwest, and the Northwest is really coming together wanting to see a church plant. They realized that there had been years and years, and as many of our regions experienced, a lot of talk about church planting. And now there's this real desire to see a church plant. And so we're having conversations with them as well. So to see multiple regions, and not just the Northwest, but looking here at what regions 9 and 10 can do together. And so one of the ideas, a couple of ideas we have is to do Spanish-speaking ministry on the south side of Grand Rapids. Many of our churches are not in urban areas. In fact, I don't know that we have but just a few, if that are in urban areas. Most of our churches are in rural or out in suburban areas, and so we want to be able to reach into the community. And Grace Bible College is right here, so within 5 minutes, being able to plant a church would be a tremendous asset, a tremendous blessing. So that's a little bit of what's going on. We're really looking at reversing things a bit. And I've had conversations with Julio in Puerto Rico, with Guillermo in Bolivia, and some of those names aren't necessarily going to ring a bell, and that is maybe unimportant right now. But just guys that are sensing that the Lord's saying, come to the United States, serve in the United States, use my gifts and talents in the United States. And we just don't see that very often. We are, pretty busy with sending missionaries out to Africa or to Central and South America, wherever that might be. So for those that have been have received this discipleship over the years and that training, now wanting to come here and be a part of a multi-ethnic ministry, that's exciting to me. And as a father of an African child, we adopted our daughter Kamea about 7 years ago. I want to see our fellowship be more diverse, not just for the sake of it, not just so we can sit here and say we're more diverse, but that there's a true sense that the body of Christ is, all races and creeds across the board. And I want our Grace Gospel Fellowship to be more of a representation of that. Coming up in the fall, we're hoping to get out to Exponential. There's a conference out in LA, and there's a conference in Chicago. And so we want to be able to get the training as a Grace Gospel Fellowship. We've done some level of church planting, but not very much, and not necessarily hugely successful. And so we want to get as much of that information, as much of that training as we can, and then incorporate and empower others to do that as well. In the fall, our hope is to have a capital campaign, and you might be like cringing because you think about a building project. This is not for buildings. Really, it's about church planting and being able to come alongside of regions, come alongside of individual churches and say, we want to support you, not just financially, but in all ways possible. So you'll be getting more information about that and an additional 40-day prayer journey that will go on as well. I'd like to have Pastor Trent, and I know come up, and he's sharing about building. I know I just said it's not about buildings, but those are encouraging things. When you haven't necessarily seen growth in a little while, and to see some of that excitement, I'm excited to hear, as Trent has been sharing with me, what's been happening in Ada. And maybe you can just give us a brief snapshot of what's been going on and how the Lord's been working.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we're really excited, and like Josh said, it's just exciting to be a part of the church. Oh, okay. It's exciting to be a part of the church at this point in time. It has nothing to do with me and everything to do with what God is doing. But about 2 or 3 years ago, we started a strategic planning process, and one of the members of our church has that as his training. He's a school superintendent. He's done it with several school systems, and he brought that to our church. And we had several committees, and we had a building and finance committee, we had an outreach committee, and we had a ministry committee. And one of the ideas that came out of that was to build a larger fellowship hall. And, when I first heard that idea, I wasn't on the finance committee, I was on a different committee. And I first heard that idea, I thought, well, that's a great idea. Maybe, 10 years from now, when maybe we'll get to that point where we can actually think about that. But they started to look at our finances and look at the growth that we've had with some new families, and we realized that God was working. God has been blessing us financially, and we've had some events where we've run out of space, and so we've needed some extra room. And so as we started to plan and started to look at the possibility, we just saw the pieces come together, and we're excited that we just had a groundbreaking ceremony Palm Sunday, and just to see the excitement that is taking place at our church. A couple of other things that have come out of that strategic planning is our outreach team. And we started out with a goal to be involved in our community, maybe have 5 outreach events that year, and then kind of go from there. And we went beyond that, serving dinners at the community center, volunteering in the food pantry, being a part of some of the community events in the parades. So it's just been really neat to meet people, to get out in the community, to really be a part of reaching out and representing Christ in the Ada community. It's been neat to see some of our small groups really take off, and we have a ladies group that's just phenomenal. We talk about discipleship, and that's a group where they really have really grown close to each other and are sharing life together. So it's just really neat to see how God is working, and to know that this is God. I mean, He's doing it. He's bringing the people together, and we're just so excited to see the potential and for that new facility, and we know that He's going to do great things there. So, pray for us as we'll be ripping into the ground here very soon, and pray that God would continue to guide us, and that we would just get through each step of that program, and we're excited to see how we're going to be able to use that for the ministry there.
Thanks, Trent. Maybe you'd be willing to send some video of you guys ripping into the ground. I'd like to see what that looks like. Hands, you going to use hands for that? So just some exciting things. I know we could pass the mic around, and I know there's also very difficult things that are going on. I don't know if Don Hosfeld Don's right there. I just want to, I've been having a lot of conversations with Don, and I think sometimes, Don's had a number of difficult things over this last year especially, and with church, but personally. And I believe, and I really want us to be able to come alongside of Don, and we're going to give you guys an opportunity at the end to be able to pray for Don and Valerie and the ministry in Quincy. Sometimes we look at success and we think it's big buildings, and we look at success and we say it's 400 people, or we look at success and it's this ministry starting over here. Sometimes success is simply saying, yes, I will go. Don and Valerie left the comforts of being in the St. Louis area and being at St. Louis Bible Fellowship to go 2 hours, roughly 2.5 hours to Quincy, not knowing what was ahead of them and not knowing if there would be success or not. And simply stepping out is a success. Many of us sit in the comfort of where we are in our positions. We may not be completely happy, but it's comfortable where we're at. And so I really applaud Don, and I applaud others that have taken a little bit of an Abraham move and say, you know what, Lord, I'm going. You've called me there, I'm going. And not always is it successful in our sense, in our earthly sense. But I think simply going is a tremendous success. Amen? Amen. So we'll give it a chance. We're going to have prayer time at the end. We just really want to be lifting up a handful of things that we can be thinking about. But Don, it's just great to see you and Valerie this week. And hopefully Don and Sandy are taking good care of you over there. Well, they are. Yeah. We're going to do prayer in a little bit, but I do want to give out some coffee. And I want to stretch your mind a little bit. And it wouldn't really be stretching because technically Kevin Krause stretched our minds. I don't know anybody know how many years ago it was that Kevin and Lisa went to Australia? 20 plus years ago, maybe. Okay, so and maybe many of us thought, a coffee house, how is that a church? How is that a ministry? And now many of our guys, I know talking to Nick and some of the students, there's a desire to see different aspects of ministry started. And so maybe saw some pictures of a guy roasting coffee. When I was in Holland, I started roasting coffee at the church. I had a small little roaster, and it was discipleship with the senior high boys to be able to talk about roasting, to talk about life, talk about the Lord. And so I looked at that and I started to think, this is a viable ministry. I mean, it's a business, maybe, but it's also ministry. You think about the act of roasting coffee and the process that it has to go through, the heating process, and how it has to be really, just like us in our lives, and the process it goes through to be edible. We're not edible, but we're usable, and hopefully as we go through that process. So we're going to give away some coffee, and we've got these names here, and if you feel like Craig Apels thinks he's going to get it, and he may still get it, but if it looks like they're all blank and there's just Craig Apel on there, it's not my fault. So we need an outside source, and we'll use Zach here. Just reach your hand in there without looking for a big Z. Must be present to win. You are correct. What do we got? Alonso. It's Wait. Is Alonso here? He's not here, thankfully. Well, you know what? Come here. Do you want this coffee? I bought it just a little short distance from your house.
This is the first reason. The second reason is I don't like coffee. Bad tico. Don't like it. So I can give it to you.
Should we draw another number? Why don't you draw it?
Okay, I gotta go.
Let me take that.
Yeah.
If I give you the mic, then my time is over, and that's. Just so you know, Alonso and I are actually twins. You may look at that and think that's crazy, but we were both born on January 10th, 1974. And
I look older.
You could have said a lot of other things, balder and bigger, and I remember visiting Alonso in Costa Rica, and first time there, and he told me about the shower, but I didn't listen. They have those things called widowmakers, and so when I reached up to adjust it, he thought there was a schoolgirl trapped in the bathroom that screaming. So I almost lost my life in his house. But that's why. Yeah, that's Wally Dawson. Wally, ordination man. All right. We're going to have to work on that again. Okay. So coffee roasting is one of those things that I'd love to see engaged. Whether we call it a church down the road, I don't know. Maybe we call it a ministry, and maybe it's business as missions. But we need to be looking for different ways to engage the community. I read a book recently called Growing Young, and one of the things they suggested that a church did was to be able to, they did a building project, but for a community center. They took that community center, and one day a week, the church rented it out. So the authority was truly the community center, which was reaching out Monday through Friday and into Saturday. And the church was more just a renter. And I think we need to be thinking outside the box a little bit. And I'd like to have just a brief discussion, and then we're going to get into prayer. But I'd love to hear some ideas that have been percolating in your mind of alternative ministries that could be, whether we call them church or not, I'm not worried about that. But what are ways that we can truly reach the community that might not be in the traditional sense? The traditional sense can be effective. We're not going to diminish that at all. But there may be other ways to do this. So have you been thinking about other ways to reach our communities? Dr. Sam.
My pastor tells us every once in a while, what would happen if the church disappeared from here? Would anybody miss us? And in light of that, it so happens that my wife's sister and her husband attend these gigantic Southern Baptist churches in Florida and one in Memphis. And then last Easter, my daughter goes to Wheaton Bible Church. They live up in the Wheaton area. And those churches, they do something that I'm going to take to my pastor and suggest for us. What do we do to reach out to the neighborhood just to do good things? In the book that we're using at Grace Bible College for evangelism, The Best Kept Secret of Christian Mission, in which he's an Australian, he says, we have thought evangelism was simply going out and talking to people and sharing the gospel. But you realize, he said, that a lot of people are in places where they can't go and talk to people. How about all the people in rest homes or wherever they are, they're sick? How about the people who are scared to death? Whatever. He says, if we only believe that missions or evangelism is speaking, then are you and I involved with missionaries? We're not over there speaking. He said, prayer is number one. Jesus said, pray to the Lord of harvest. He didn't go and talk about anything else first. And so he gives a number of things that we should do, and one of them, the church needs to reach out of themselves so that people know that they're there and we're doing good things, good works out into the neighborhood. And these churches I'm talking about, they have a day a week. We know we have a day that people come to our local church. We clean up, like right now in the spring, we'll be having people come to the church Saturday morning, and we do all the work around the church, do those type of things. But how about the neighborhood? And what they do, and something has been done here a little bit to Grace, is the one who's responsible goes and checks with widows and people around here. Then during the fall, the students will go in and clean their lawn, fix up anything they need to do in a small way. Well, that's what they do. These churches send out people beforehand, maybe sometimes weeks and months before, to see what are the needs out there. And one example that was given to me was that there's a man who was his house and his whole parcel was condemned by the city because he had old beaten up cars there. There's grass growing up and around his house. The church went there, took big trucks, carried everything out, cleaned the place for the man, and restored the place to look acceptable in the neighborhood. That for the church. And when the people go out, they all have T-shirts with the name of the church and something of another motto that they put on there. So I think that's one way that we really could do to get into the neighborhood instead of us just feeling good being in a church building where we all are Christians. And I think that we need to get our testimony out. At least is one thing I'm going to work on with my church.
I don't have a specific suggestion, but I think we have a resource in our Grace Fellowship that might be worth tapping into. Many of you know Kevin Rigg, and one of the things I really appreciate about Kevin is that he thinks of ministry really outside the box, at least compared to the way I tend to think of it. Let me give you two examples of things that he has done fairly recently here in West Michigan. Several years ago, he lives up by Grace Adventures now, but he has a ranch up there, and I think right now he has about 40 horses. Several years ago, he was bringing those horses down into the inner city of Grand Rapids, where in a vacant lot he set up a rodeo ring. Well, it drew kids from all over the community. And he and his daughters would teach them how to brush the horses and care for the horses and ride the horses. And then at the end of the summer, they had a quote, unquote, rodeo in which all the kids got cowboy hats and their parents came to watch them, and they were pointed towards local Sunday schools. One thing he's done. Some of you will remember the old Kriegel's bookstore. Kevin bought that bookstore and turned it into a gym in which he had, I don't know, $10 bazillion worth of free weights in the basement, and a boxing ring upstairs with a Golden Gloves boxer who was teaching boxing, and a dance studio for kids to come from the community and learn dancing. You say, church. No, not church, but opportunity to connect with people and share the gospel with them. I would encourage the council to give Kevin Rigg a call and have him meet with you and brainstorm. He has the ability to really think outside the box.
A couple of years ago, I got to meet Elmer Towns from Liberty University. He did a workshop in Minnesota on the online church, and he gave a lot of examples of churches that have been established online, and they're reaching people. And one of the problems I think with our movement is grace believers are so spread out. It's 50 miles or 100 miles to the nearest Grace Church, where I think if we developed some online things, and we don't have time to go into the details on that, but I can fill you in on how that's actually done and how this ministry happens. And it's really unlimited. It's just like Grace Bible College here. My goodness, how can you have 1,000 students on this little campus? Well, you could have 1,000 students or 1,000 people, at your online church involved in learning the grace message at a very low cost.
A few years ago, I was in the Philippines, and I met a pastor there who had been sent out to a village to spread the gospel there, to plant a church there. And he went and started meeting his neighbors, and the first time they were all really friendly. And he said, I'm a pastor, I'm talking about the Lord. And then the second time they were a little less friendly, and then the third time they didn't even come to the door. And he was having all sorts of problems meeting people. No one wanted anything to do with him or his church. So he said, well, what do the people here need? And they needed job skills. And so he started a free school that taught electrical work and how to fix engines on cars and buses and things like that. And his first term, he had like 10 people. And now when I was there, the school was huge. They had something like 100 people come to know the Lord. And they had basically just this trade school that was for free. But if you wanted to come to the school, you were required to go to the chapel services. And something like 80 or 90% of his students came to know the Lord, and they had a church in that area, and we're doing really great things. So it's an idea.
So I have a dream to one day be able to plant a church in downtown Grand Rapids. I would like to be able to formulate a team of bivocational ministers, whether that be a team of 4 or 6 who have specific roles within within the church, where like I would really like to be like a director or somebody who's able to direct the program of the church, get a guy who's a lead role, worship role, things like that, just different roles, and we can get 4 to 6 of those people where they're working part-time in the community of Grand Rapids, where they're building a community around them inside of the job that they're working, whether they're a barista, working at a coffee shop, working at a restaurant, things like that, working inside the community, and working part-time within a church. And then you take those 4 to 6 people and allow them to then formulate their own house churches. So you get those 4 to 6 people who are gathering people inside their homes, inside their apartments downtown, inside their wherever they're at inside Grand Rapids, and they're building this small house church type of community, and that would play out for 6 months to a year, where everybody's kind of doing their own thing with their own strategy of what their house church will do, what kind of ministries they want to do within their house church, asking questions within their house churches, some of the things that maybe you don't see at a normal church, like how's your life going, what do you need prayer for, what are you struggling with. I think being a young person in ministry, some of the critiques I have is I don't really see laymen really praying for one another, and that's like kind of sad to me. So being able to get the people involved in this smaller setting, in this house church setting, doing ministry, maybe a house church is doing, wanting to go and volunteer at a student center, or maybe they want to go and get some barbers and cut hair downtown Grand Rapids. But getting those 6 people to formulate those house churches, and if you can get 6 people who are being paid by vocationally, and you get 15 people within those house churches, you have 90 people right away. And then I would love to be able to move into the Civic Theater in downtown Grand Rapids, a theater that isn't being utilized for church ministry yet. We don't have a church inside a theater yet in downtown Grand Rapids, and that's a model that's being used in New York, LA, and they're really thriving and growing. And some of the articles I've read about the New York's downtown church in New York City is really thriving and growing just because they're implemented in theaters that are right next to things that are going on downtown. So I'd love to be able to move into a theater, rent it out every Sunday, so I don't have to worry about upkeep. I'm just going to be renting this church, and then allowing myself to partner with the theater, and be able to grow it and implement things like getting we're saving money because we aren't paying for the building, we're trying to pay off the cost of the building. I'm newer to this too, so I don't know everything about ministry budgets and things like that, but what I know is renting a building is a little bit cheaper than having to pay for the cost and keeping the upkeep of it, finding people to keep the upkeep of it, things like that. So being able to rent a space for like a Sunday night service in downtown Grand Rapids, where I can send out teams of people to walk around downtown. Madcap closes around then. Some of the other coffee shops around the area, it closes around then. Civic Theater is right in the heart of downtown. So you can go out and do this kind of urban ministry where people are walking around. You have an evangelistic team. You've got a worship team that's focused on excellent worship, how to get people inside of the theater to enjoy the presence of God, things like that. And you have multiple staff members who are then going in as one unit instead of one guy trying to do it all. So it really helps delegate the how the church works. Now, there's a lot of things that I don't know because I am 21 and not into ministry. So that's why I wouldn't be like the lead role of this, because I'm super young and I'm still in college. So just trying to get a new strategy, a new way to be into Grand Rapids, into downtown area, right next to the college. So I know I'm not too far from a lot of you guys, and if something starts to happen, I can get over here and ask questions and see other people that I love and trust.
Awesome. Anybody wonder if you ever took a breath in there? I don't know how you did that. The passion, you can sense the passion, right? Okay, that excitement. I'm going to give it to Steve, and then last one here.
Thank you, Steve from Grace Adventures. And we think strategic partnerships are just vital, maximizing human financial resources. And so one of the things we look at is alternative income sources. Are there things that we can do that can generate revenue that can feed back into our ministry programs, whether it's scholarship or underwriting new ministry initiatives? And so we look for those types of ventures in our location. So we built a Christian family RV park that generates revenue that helps us underwrite additional other ministry initiatives and programs. That was by design. We rent out some of our property to a local propane company, and we get our propane at 30 cents below market cost, which allows us then to take that money, throw it back into ministry. We work with community associations, so we have a SWAT team that comes out because we have all these beds, so they use our property. So the local law enforcement uses our property to do rescue scenarios, and we have lake associations. We open up our facilities for them to come in at our cost. And a couple of other things, we go to like the Michigan Horse Expo. That's a secular thing that our ranch ministry director, they do a Sunday morning chapel and they do workshops and get name recognition that then allows us to be able to reach into those communities that traditionally are not involved in the church as a whole. And then can funnel them back into our camp programs. Then lastly, we do a Camp Unity at the Michigan Unity Fest, which is in Muskegon. So we run a day camp all for that whole conference, and 60,000 people come through there. I say all that not because we do all these great things. I say that because it just takes a focused effort to understand that strategic partnerships, every one of those relationships comes because we're trying to say we want to reach kids and strengthen families, and how can we do that at the point of need? And so that would be my encouragement, my challenge to you as you go back. How can we do that with a community liaison?
Thank you, Stephen. I think you heard throughout so many the idea of partnerships and reaching into the community. One thing to say about Celebration is the partnership they have with the Burmese church. To be able to connect, have just have a great time of fellowship, but also opening up space on the property for them to use as a garden. There's many churches. Parkside started a gardening ministry out there as well. And if you have a desire to plant a garden and see that as a ministry where you give back to the community, I think that's the key here, is that we're reaching into the community. If we decide we're going to stay inside the building and stay protected and talk to each other, and that's it, nobody's coming to Christ through that way. So we have to get out into our communities. And we have to do it together. I shouldn't say have to. We should want to do it together. If we're 30 minutes away, let's partner. Let's not let our doctrinal differences come in the way of us getting together and having fellowship and having partnership in reaching the community. And you might be 5 minutes away from each other, and sometimes churches don't get along even then. We have got to work together and realize that it's not about us, and it's about Jesus Christ. So what I want to do in our last 10 minutes is to be able to spend time in prayer. To spend time in prayer about us as a fellowship, individually reaching out into our communities, what that looks like, and be praying specifically in small groups. To think about church planting, and yes, GGF-wise, but how you individually and how your church and your region are going to see this through. And then also, I really want you to be specifically praying for Don and Valerie and Quincy. I know we could pray for all of us. I get it. But I really want you to lift up Don and Valerie Hosfeld and the ministry in Quincy and where the Lord's going to take that or what's going to come from that. And just for healing for them as well. So let's get into groups of no more than 5, preferably 3 or 4. You can spread out now. You don't have to try to cram into the middle section. Let's just spend this last 10 minutes in prayer, and when you're done, you're free to go.